Hello, thanks for watching the video. This video is a video response to a video I saw by Sam Harris on, I think it was The Big Think, detailing that the self is an illusion. In this video I'm going to give my own opinions on why I agree with Sam Harris, but more about exactly what he's referring to, because there's many people, after reading the comments in the video, many people have misunderstood exactly what he was saying, because he is not saying the self does not exist. That's the primary error I can see with people putting in the comments. They're assuming that he's saying that the self does not exist. No, he's saying the self is an illusion. But in order to fully understand that, I need a little bit of explanation, so which is what I'm going to hopefully give in this video, as well as my own opinion. So in order to explain this, which can be quite a tricky concept to grasp, what I'm going to do is to go back to the very first parts of language, the very first time that language was created. And along with language, the thinking and thought processes were created, because we also think in language and concepts. Now, it's long been understood that probably the very first words, or vocalizations even, were to tell of signs of danger. And that is actually where our current swear words have come from. So probably the very first vocalizations or words or whatever was to alert us of danger. And if you consider it, that's very important. But specifically in this video, it's about the self. So we can consider the very first time, the very first people came up with the words that relate to the self. So what they must have done is gone, in very simple terms, I, me, you, other person. So hopefully you can grasp that those words, vocalizations or whatever you want to call them, were used originally to point to the presumed object that they refer to. So the pointer or word I, me points this, assumed to point to this, and the word you, other person, points that way. So the thing to grasp here is notice that the words are not the thing itself. They are pointers to the thing, assumed pointers. Now that's the first thing. Hopefully it's really important to try to grasp that. The words themselves are pointers. They are not the thing itself. And this is where the illusion of the self comes in. We make a mistake. We make a mistake in believing that the words themselves are the thing itself, and they're not. They're pointers. The self, I, is a concept. It is an idea, a belief, a part of language, and it is used to refer to something. It is not the thing itself, but we make the mistake in believing that it is. That is the illusion. That is the problem. And although Sam Harris is referring to specific single object, single thing, the self, I, me, you can use this to refer to anything, because everything is the same mistake. We've made the mistake in believing that the words, the concepts, the beliefs, the ideas are the thing itself, and they're not. And in relation to Buddhism, this has been known for 2,500 years. The Buddhists have been stating this for 2,500 years' time. There's a quote apparently from the Buddha that states, "The finger that points at the moon is not the moon." And that's exactly it. The pointer, the word moon, is not the moon. So say, for example, if we go back to the self, you could say this with the word I, and we know that that's a pointer. As I described, the I, what we're using, is a pointer. It is not the thing itself. It is a pointer to an apparent thing. But we say, I am thinking, I am making a video, I am going out to go buy a bottle of milk at the shops. And every time we say that, we're not using it as a pointer. We are actually stating it's a real thing. If the point is, I am going to buy a bottle of milk, in that sentence we're referring to I as if it was a real thing. We're not suggesting that the pointer, the word, the concept I is going out to buy a bottle of milk, because that's impossible. Indeed, on the converse side, bottle of milk. that is also a pointer. It's a concept that apparently refers to a solid, real thing that there is. And this is the entire thing. This is why the self is an illusion. What it means is that we use the word self, we use the word I, not as a pointer, but make the mistake that we think it's the thing itself. And it's not. It's only a concept. I is a concept, an idea, a belief. Even if you were to say that the body is me, the body clearly is not a permanent, solid, unchanging thing. There are processes going on in the body all the time. The body is changing all the time. Chemicals are moving. Electrical activity in the brain is changing. Although we say I, me, the self, and we are subtly referring to it as if it was a permanent, unchanging thing, it clearly isn't. And again, even scientifically, I believe it's something like 97% of the body's cells are rejuvenated every 7 years. So we can say every 7 years, what we were referring to as the self gets changed into something else, and it's no longer the same thing. And yet, we continuously use the words to point to something we believe it doesn't change, because the concept itself, I, me, doesn't change. It's always I, me. So by mistaking the concept for the real thing, we also make the error that what we're actually referring to is a permanent, unchanging thing, and it's not. In relation to what I've just said, the scientific concept of entropy, which is one of the laws of thermodynamics, I believe, that everything is in a constant state of change. Everything is breaking down. Energy is continuously being changed in one form to another. But when we use these words, the concepts, to refer to things, bottle of milk, I, me, self, room, walls, none of these things that we're referring to are permanent, unchanging things, and yet we make the mistake in thinking that they are. And to go further, this is the very basis of suffering itself. And when I say suffering, I mean specifically mental suffering, caused by the thought processes. So, for example, anxiety, fear, depression, anger. And all this comes specifically from the mistake that we're making, that we believe that the self is a permanent, unchanging thing, and it's not. So, for example, when a person damages their body, there is upset. When a person dies, there is upset. When the person gets a brand new car and gets their first scratch, there is upset. All that because we subtly think that these things are permanent, and they're not. All this suffering comes from our mistake in thinking that what we're referring to is unchanging. And nothing is unchanging. And that's the mistake. So in other words, and this is what I use in many of my other videos, in other words, that there is a self. The self exists. But we need to know how. It exists as what? The self, as hopefully you've got from the first part of this video, the self is a concept. It's an idea, a belief, a part of language. That's how it exists. So it exists as part of language. But, and this is the crucial thing, it does not exist as a permanent, unchanging, solid thing. Or, as I often say, an inherent object, an inherent self. It doesn't exist like that. So that is why the self is an illusion, because we make the mistake in thinking the word is the thing, and we make the mistake in thinking the thing is permanent and unchanging. Now, there are many replies on the video I saw of Sam Harris saying something along these lines. Okay, the self is an illusion, but what realizes that it's an illusion? But the problem with such a question is it's fallen in to exactly the same trap as I explained. The self is an illusion. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It refers to the fact that the word doesn't point to an inherently real thing. That is the illusion. But people are subtly taking what he's saying to mean that the self does not exist at all. And a person can realize, either mentally or experientially, both of those are possible, a person can realize that there is no inherent self. A person can realize that there is no center to experience. It's perfectly possible. A person can realize that there is no inherent self, but there is a conceptual self, in language, in thoughts, in ideas. In fact, it's language which is the entire page of replies. So in the page of replies, it's all ideas and thoughts and concepts. So, to answer the question, who is it that realizes that the self is only a concept? The self that is only a concept. You don't need to dismiss it, you just need to realize what it is. It's only a concept. It is not an inherently existing permanent thing. And that is the illusion, and that's how to see through it. Now mentally, you can grasp what I'm saying, and maybe even mull over in your mind what I'm saying and see how it refers to things and how we're relating to the world. And mentally you can say, yes, of course I see that the self, I, me, it's a word, it's a concept. The thing that we believe it points to isn't permanent, it's completely changing. It's all changing all the time. And you can grasp that for yourself. It should be clear. But mentally understanding it is not an experiential realization. An experiential realization is also possible. You can go through a process of examination, of looking, and have this as a permanent realization. You can realize that there is no inherent self as a permanent realization. You can realize that there is no self center, because the self is meant to be a center of experience. You can realize there is no center to experience. Or more specifically, you can realize that the idea, the experiential concept that there is a self is an illusion, just like Sam is saying that the self is an illusion, which it is. Nothing actually changes. In experience, nothing changes, but you see through an illusion. You see through the illusion all along that you have always believed that there is a center to experience, and there isn't. And other people have got confused with what Sam Harris is saying, because in the first part of his video he talks about consciousness relating to an individual self, a personal consciousness, and then later on talks about the realization that consciousness isn't personal, or experience isn't personal. But again, I believe these people are making the mistake in thinking that Sam Harris is saying that the self does not exist, as like some sort of denial of the self, or denial of material existence. And it's not a denial, and it's not a rejection. It's merely seeing the mistake that's being made. And seeing the mistake that's being made in a fundamental way. But seeing through the illusion experientially is actually quite profound, because it's any reference to I, me, or a self that is examined and is seen through. So for example, we have I think. That is a concept. The I is a concept. There isn't an inherently real thing doing the thinking. There isn't an inherently real, separate, permanent thing that is thinking. And perhaps another one, maybe even bigger in terms of its impact, is choice and free will. And just like what Sam Harris says on this video, and I think he says in other videos, that free will and choice are also an illusion. What does that mean? Does that mean there is no free will or choice? No. Does that mean the idea that there is a person here with free will is incorrect? No. Specifically, again, We take I. I is a concept. It's a word, a belief, a pointer. It is not a thing, an inherently existing thing itself, nor does the word point to an unchanging, permanent, inherently existing thing. We make the mistake that it does. We make the mistake that there is an inherently real existing thing here with choice, with free will, and there isn't. Because also, just like the self, free will and choice, they are concepts. They're ideas about what we think is going on. We can think that there is a self, a real self, or we can think that the self is more than a pointer. We can think that free will and choice are more than pointers, that they are a real thing. And yet none of it is a real thing. None of it refers to inherently real things. They're all concepts, they're all ideas, all beliefs. And the idea, belief that there is a self with free will and choice is a perfectly acceptable idea, and people can go on with that. The problem comes in believing that there is an inherently existing, permanent, solid self here that has something called free will, choice. It's not. It doesn't work like that. All these are simply concepts. It's ideas and beliefs. That's all it is. But these things exist as beliefs. They exist as concepts. And on that basis, they're perfectly acceptable. And they don't need to be rejected, or indeed said that they do not exist, or they are wrong. We merely need to see through the illusion that we're creating for ourselves by mistaking all these words and concepts to relate to something that is inherently real. None of the words and concepts do refer to anything that's inherently real. They are only pointers. That is the illusion. As I say, hopefully, maybe in this video you've grasped what I'm saying. I hope you have. If you haven't, please write a comment and I'll try and go into for more depth. This can be both understood mentally, which hopefully in this video you might have grasped what I'm kind of pointing to mentally, but it can also be an experiential realization. It's perfectly possible to do that. And many people, once they've got an inkling of the error that's going on, they actually want to go through and actually get an experiential realization. Please click like if you like this. Please click subscribe from seeing more of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you again in the next one. Take care. Bye for now.